Hello and welcome back to another video. In this episode we are spearfishing the far north. This morning I went for a bit of a drive, decided to go half an hour up the coast, ended up turning into 2.5 hours, but this is easily the best spot I've come across so far. Down the coast the water was just disgusting, to be honest. Matapori, Tuikaka, no good. So we punched up a bit further and we're into it. See you in the water. In many instances, shore diving is the most practical option. It is important to have an equipment setup that is easy to transport down to the beach. On my way down to the beach, I want to have everything tidy and organized so I can get into the water without any hassle. By this point, I already have my float line extended, connected to my gun and connected to my float, so I don't have to worry about that when I get into the water. The only thing that I'm going to have to do is to put my fins on. I already have my mask in place. This is essential. If you're going out and surf, you need to make sure that you have your mask on. The fins are the final piece that goes on before you begin your dive. It is not recommended by myself or pretty much anyone else to walk out there in fins. Put them on when you get into the water. Just be careful not to lose them. I've seen it numerous times in current and murky water. Once you are out past the breakers, take some time to check over your equipment. Make sure everything's turned on, working, load your gun, and make sure you're ready in case anything comes by. So on shore, the viz was far from spectacular. Luckily for me, there was an island nearby, maybe 200-300 meters, so I swam across to it. The swim honestly was not very fun at all. Very murky water, couldn't see the bottom, couldn't really see anything, just swimming through this open channel. Spearfishing has gotten me into some odd predicaments, but they've all been worth it in the end. Never bite off more than you can chew, remember that you have to get back. This day there was a reasonable amount of swell, hence the long drive trying to find a decent spot. I'd initially started on the sheltered side of the island, eventually moving my way around the right hand side and out towards the open side. While not particularly nice to dive, some fish can favour these turbulent areas. As I'm swimming along the surface, a wave breaks over my head. At this point, I look around, see a bunch of rocks sticking out of the water, and decide to pull the pin and move away from that area. This area was holding a few leather jackets. However, I'd feel more dignified taking home nothing than just a leather jacket. Don't get me wrong though, leather jackets are tasty. As far as difficulty gets, they are probably one of the easiest fish out there, if not the easiest fish. To me, one of the biggest appeals of spearfishing is the challenge. Shooting leather jackets simply isn't challenging, and thus not very rewarding. Large snapper can often be found parked up in the shallows, so I spent a bit of time putting some work into this area and trying to locate them. However, I believe there was too much swell for them to be really parked up in this spot. Always be aware of your surroundings and try avoid getting beached on any rocks, especially when you're wearing a smooth skin wetsuit jacket. On this next dive, I managed to actually find some of my target species, trevally. However, these ones were too small for me to bother with shooting. By this point in the dive, this was honestly the most fish that I'd seen the entire day. Sometimes when you go out on the ocean, it's on. There's fish everywhere, and you're sport for choice. Other days, you're really quite hard pressed to come back with a feed. Just after swimming back from the island, I see something floating midwater. I extend out, take a shot, and hit this seaweed dead center. Good way to get that bloodlust out of the system. Getting back onto the beach after a shore dive can be challenging in swelly conditions. However, it's not usually too difficult. You want to swim up to the beach as far as you can until you can stand in the water comfortably, at which point you remove your flippers and walk up the beach. Depending on the conditions, I'll either tow my float in or wind it up out there and take it with me as I walk up the beach. When there's not as much swell, I'll generally just tow it in where I can sort it out on the waterfront. When you're putting your spear gun down on the beach, it's a good idea to put it over the top of something to avoid getting sand inside all the mechanisms. With my float line, I'm going to start coiling it up, making sure that it's nice and streamlined, nice and easy for the next time that I go diving. There's been plenty of instances in my life where I've turned up to a dive spot and spent probably half an hour just untangling my float line. It is the most frustrating thing. So, sort this out while you're getting out of the water so you don't have to do it next time. Save yourself the hassle. I would highly recommend that everyone who spearfishes owns a float boat. They're a great safety tool, keeping your fish out of the water, keeping sharks away, putting first aid kits, water, things that you need when you're out there. essential piece of dive kit. As a shore diver, sand is one of your worst enemies, so if you ever put anything down on the beach, make sure you return it to the water to wash off all of that excess sand. You don't want it through your car, through your house, through your bed, through your hair, through everything. Sand gets everywhere, so make sure you leave as much of it as you can at the beach. Walking back to the car is the most grueling part of any shore dive, especially when you've got a bunch of fish. Fortunately for me, I wasn't that successful this day. However, when you've caught a lot of fish and you're walking back to the car, that's when the exhaustion can really set in, and by the time you get back, you are buggered. It was a tough day, it really was, but the main point was going out, doing some scouting, finding some new areas that we can come back to in some better conditions. In summer when there's more fish around, and when the water's flatter. Well, that was a humbling experience to say the least. It's been a long time since I've got smoked like that, man. It's not my day out there. Murky water, new area, diving solo. I was just thinking about sharks the whole time, to be honest. But the fish just weren't there, man. Like, there are porori, red mokies, a couple of small treads, but I really didn't even see anything worth shooting. Scudding when you mish all the way up, go on the fat missions and catch bugger all. Seems to be the way it usually works out. Anyway, it was great to be in the water, as always. Nothing to show for it, but I had a great time. The water is still pretty cold out there, to be honest. It's about 14-15 degrees. Starting to get a little bit of the feeling back in my hands now. Always good. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. That is what most of the coast is looking like at the moment. So all things considered, we got a pretty good dive spot for the day. However, the fish weren't there.